Previously on Maplestory the novel, Sacred Tears.
There has to be a way to channel this darkness without succumbing to its corruption.
Have you done it, Master?
I have been lonely these past 3 years. But that's not why I'm here.
Doesn't that mean she will age more quickly?
Her soul is partially mortal, meaning part of her life is tied to Usorian time, but her soul is also partly Daephic. She is something in between.
And now, the continuation of Chapter 16, Part 2. The strings of black energy snapped shut around the unsuspecting couple, dragging them through a glowing pit of dark, swirling goo. In moments, they dropped into a stone brick cell, surrounded by fierce giant knights.
What is this? What is it you want?
The man screamed, trying to break the bands holding him on the floor.
If it's money you want, my father can get you all you want.
The woman screamed. Will chuckled under his breath, pushing up his hexagonal-rimmed glasses and walking into the swirling dim light of the bands.
What we want is far more precious than gold or silver. Your contribution to Kritas is much appreciated,
He said, the light hiding his eyes with its glare. A woman with blood-red hair stepped out from behind him, her eyes glowing with a sickening green light, putting her hand out. A tight feeling began to rise in the chests of the couple when a violet circle shone around them, revealing a white-haired man standing motionless with a dark metal staff in his hand. Clouds pulled from them, distilling into a pale pink liquid inside a small bottle. Within moments, the couple fell still as the thrall knights gathered them up and tossed the corpses into the gorge.
Oh my, Will. You are taking the title of King of Spiders quite seriously. Even I wouldn't have been so heartless,
Hilda commented, handing the bottle to Arkarium as he readied an alchemic matrix.
He provides us with the life forces we need to finish the last of our research, Hilda.
Arkarium replied dryly. Will grinned, writing a note in his journal before adjusting his glasses again.
Indeed. Any butterflies that come into my web should be grateful for the opportunity. Besides, where else would we get the life forces for our work?
Hilda draped an arm over his shoulders and kissed his cheek.
You are such a terrifying noble,
She teased, walking to Arkarium and watching as the reaction worked. The master alchemist began to grunt and strain, holding his hands against the pressure building between his palms. Tense minutes passed as the reaction intensified, lighting the room with a pale lavender glow, and tremors filtered through the ground. With a howling whisper, all sounds ceased, and the pressure disappeared. The candle's light dimmed as a chill filled the room, making a thin frost build on the stones and table. All that remained was the single glowing crystal in the center of the matrix, pulsing with a faint chime like a tiny bell. Hissing whispers howled around them when all the shadows swirled and pulled into the crystal. A pulse of light like a loud drum pounded from it, shoving everyone back hard, ripping through the halls and above the ground, ringing the hollow bell within the clock tower at the center of the city above. Arkarium lowered his arm, staring at the pale rose-colored crystal hovering above the matrix, pulsing with almost otherworldly power. Reverently, he reached out to it as the crystal seemed to be drawn to his palm. No bigger than a thimble, but brimming with energy.
I've done it,
he whispered, his voice shaking with excitement as he carefully stood, turning to show Hilda.
Is that?
It is an imperfect crystal. But yes, this is what you sought after. Life eternal, with your youth and beauty intact.
Hilda reached out for it, her hands shaking as she picked it up.
It may be imperfect, but its power is perfect enough.
There is but one step I require to complete this crystal, and only one person can give me what I need.
Hilda raised an eyebrow and glowered at the old alchemist, greedily clutching the crystal.
And who would that be?
The White Mage.
Will interrupted, closing his book of notes with a satisfying slap. Hilda gripped the crystal tighter, letting out an annoyed sigh while walking to the other side of the room.
That white-haired buffoon is too set on ridding the world of what he calls the darkness. And it's what we need to create this crystal. What do you need him for?
Arkarium placed a hand on his chin, stroking his beard.
Dark alchemy allows me to bend and twist life force into whatever I want. But with my current method and matrix, the power of the crystal is poisonous and will corrupt your youth over time. My spies report that the White Mage can reverse the darkness into something else. With that knowledge, I can create a perfect crystal of everlife.
I doubt he'd even want to share his findings with us. Besides, once he finds out what we're doing to create these crystals, he and his self-righteous sect will come to stop us for good.
Then what if I were to approach him as a fellow researcher? I'll ask him what he knows, and I'll bring it to Master Arkarium.
Will suggested, smirking at Hilda over his shoulder. Hilda shivered. She swore every time she looked at him, she could see hazy spider legs hovering over his back out of the corner of her eye.
Could you convince him that way? He is much more attuned to the darkness than you think, and he disappeared nearly 9 years ago. How would you even find him?
Hilda, my dear, your desire for youth and beauty drives you and prompted your failure to enlist his help. On the other hand, I have been searching for what the darkness is. All I do, even for you two, is for a better future. I doubt he'd turn that away.
Will smirked, reaching for a bag and packing it with various books, scrolls, food, and paper. Arkarium stood over him, looking down over his nose with steely eyes.
His last known location was in the Forest of Peace, west of the Dragon Forest in Lifra. There aren't many places where he could disappear and go unnoticed.
Will surmised.
We shall be waiting for your return, Will.
Arkarium thrummed, putting a heavy hand on his shoulder.
It will be glorious,
Will growled, leaving through the sewers of Kritas to find the White Mage. Hilda stared at the crystal, holding it to the light, watching the swirling clouds within. With a crazed smile, she slammed the crystal against her chest, clouds of black swirling around her as she doubled over. Arkarium heard the breaking crystal, turning back to see Hilda doubled over as clouds swirled around her.
You fool!
He shouted, reaching out as he cast a counterspell, but Hilda's glare stopped him. The crystal slowly fused with Hilda's body, flowing through her like a river of ice. A cloud of sick yellow power appeared around her, moving around her body like a slow flame. After another few seconds, Hilda's grunts of pain mellowed into hard breathing.
I told you the crystal is incomplete. Do you have any idea what could have happened to you?
Arkarium scolded, holding his hand out to help her to her feet. Hilda's once golden brown eyes glowed with the same sick yellow power that now permeated her very being.
But it didn't. And now, I have what I want.
Three weeks passed as Will trekked across the Nihal Desert, stopping in Arantia for a resupply of food and water, and leaving for Lifra soon after. Nightmares plagued him every night, and what sounded like hissing whispers constantly buzzed in his ears. As he traveled, clarity slowly came to him as he left the fog of Kritas' dark alchemy. His stomach churned and his skin paled. The realization that so many lives ended by his hand in Kritas and, by extension, Hilda and Master Arkarium fell on him like a wave. His mission to find the White Mage remained, but now he vowed never to return to Kritas. He needed to atone for all the atrocities he committed. It took him only a short time to find the outer border of the forest, but something made him hesitant to enter. The whispers haunting him pushed him on. There may be a chance the White Mage could help him atone and put him on the path of redemption. It felt like days passed in the forest while he searched, constantly aware of a dark presence somewhere out of sight. Sometimes he thought he could see a pair of eyes staring at him, only to disappear in the midnight-like air. But with each hour, panic and dread grew, as did the desperation for forgiveness driving him on. The shadows closed around him, and the whispers became louder, making him sleep less and less. And then, it happened. After waking from a particularly vivid nightmare, Will sensed something in the shadows around him. It was cold, like a breeze in a blizzard cutting straight to his soul. Large, violet eyes appeared in the great shadow before him, its shape swirling like a cloud of soot in the form of a person. Reaching for his journal with shaky hands, Will turned to the center pages, reading over a spell he had learned earlier that year as a blast of fire shot from his palm. The inferno shot through the cloud, leaving no sign that it had done anything.
What's the matter, little mage? Can't face your sins?
The shadow growled, slowly approaching. Will could hardly breathe, gathering his things and beginning to run, driven by panic. He dared not look behind him, knowing that thing was closing in. Jumping to the side, Will used a tree as cover, trying to calm the thunder in his chest and the blizzard in his lungs. Peeking around the tree, he couldn't see the creature, but still he dared not move. Letting out a breath, he turned back to see the beast salivating before him, holding its clawed hands wide. Will screamed as he turned to run, only to be met with its claws, tearing through the flesh of his back and the tree, throwing him to the ground.
What's the matter, O King of Spires? Is your crown a farce?
The shadow thrummed, picking him up by the scruff of his robes, holding him in the air to meet his gaze.
How the mighty have fallen,
it said, dragging a claw down his leg. Searing pain roared through him, feeling like winter spread under his skin. Looking down, Will saw that black ooze dripped from the wound instead of blood as ash swirled into the air.
I'm going to enjoy making you feel every last ounce of torment you inflicted. It will take weeks.
The shadow growled, taking one of its claws and driving it through Will's calf. Again, he cried out in pain as the shadow dropped him to the ground, raising its claws to strike his back again.
So, this is how it ends.
Will thought, beginning to feel the ice spreading through his legs and back, sapping his strength as he tried to crawl away. Rolling onto his back, Will spread his arms out, waiting for the strike that would no doubt kill him. Instead, a beam of bright white light cut through the shadow, making it turn to face whatever was behind it, only to have several more beams of light punch through its form until it dissolved into nothing but ash. As his consciousness faded, he could hear muffled voices in the distance as someone appeared in his vision. The person seemed to be calling out to him, but he couldn't understand what they were saying. The tone of the voice seemed worried as they called to someone else. Within moments, he was lifted and carried by someone in armor, running through the forest. As his vision faded, he saw a large white building in the distance as whoever was holding him called out. To Reen, it was strange living here in Eusoria. Time was always so much slower. Maybe slower wasn't the right word. Time felt measured and finite compared to her time within her mother's temple. There were some oddities, especially having 2 birthdays in the space of a year with her mother, and only 1 birthday while spending time with her father in Eusoria. The passing years revealed dozens of questions Reen had about herself and the power she had within her. She could lift the mood of everyone around her just by being there. She could understand nearly every magical concept and spell known to the Aurora, especially those dealing with the ultimate light her father studied so profusely. The more she understood about her power, the less afraid she became of the world, seeming to push away all the darkness around her. Additionally, Reen could instinctively feel the pain and hurt within a person's heart and soul. She could feel their darkness. Whatever her power was, she could reach within a person and remove their darkness or conquer it, helping to reignite the light within them. Her current month-long visit was in preparation for her 18th birthday, an event usually met with a massive celebration of all a person's closest friends and family. Unfortunately, her father, Dane, seemed more interested in his research than her birthday, constantly locked away within his laboratory. It was the one place within the Aurora Temple she was utterly terrified of and not allowed to go, which left one burning question in her mind over the years. Why? Why was this one room off limits to her? And why did she fear it so much? But on this day, she would put aside those questions as she was busy helping an acolyte weave a complex spell to set off magical fireworks for her party. Sprigs of blue and red flowers, snippets of emerald green ferns, and drops of white liquid all mixed in a mash of sweet-smelling potion. As she wove the final spell over the mash, Eleanor burst through the front door carrying someone in her arms, shouting for Dane and Tasia to help the young man. Reen was about to return to her magic fireworks when she felt a chill from the infirmary. Usually, she could feel the darkness within anyone as a blot or stain on a person's soul. But this feeling was far more intense, like a snowstorm against her skin. Whoever was in the infirmary needed her help to overpower the darkness within them. As Eleanor came out, Reen ran to her and caught her arm.
Who did you bring in?
I don't know. An omen was attacking him, and it looks like it got him good.
She explained, holding out her gauntlet, dripping with a thick black ooze sizzling on the metal.
If Master Dane and Tasia don't do something soon, he won't make it.
As Eleanor left to clean her armor, Reen stood in silence. She'd been on patrols with the clerics before and faced omen creatures, but she and the clerics managed to conquer them before the omens harmed anyone. Was this the result of a successful attack? A moment later, Viren stormed out of the hallway and called for any high clerics at the temple. Reen crept to the infirmary door, peeking inside to see her father and Tasia buzzing around a young man. Her father used a healing spell while Tasia cleared and cut away swaths of black ooze. All around them, Reen could see the lights dimming and the cold feeling becoming even more powerful.
Can you make the healing spell stronger?
Tasia demanded.
I don't think I can. This young man is already weak, and I don't want to strain his life force.
Tasia growled in frustration, moving faster within a wound on the young man's back, splashing disinfecting salves onto the injury. After a few minutes, Tasia grabbed a medical alchemy matrix, closed the skin, wrapped a potion-soaked bandage around the young man, and sighed heavily.
I've done everything I can for him.